I used to believe in certainty the way other men believe in God. For 20 years, I was absolutely sure of three things. Claire loved me, Ethan was a good kid, and our family was unbreakable. I built my entire world on that foundation, never questioning, never doubting. After all, why would I? I'd done everything right. 22 years ago, I met Claire at a housewarming party thrown by my college roommate. She was laughing at something in the kitchen, head thrown back, completely unself-conscious, when she tried to sing along to some terrible karaoke happening in the living room, butchering every note of Don't Stop Believin'. I knew I was in trouble. She caught me staring and shrugged, grinning. "I never claimed to be talented," she said with that infectious smile. We spent the rest of that night talking about everything and nothing. She wanted to travel the world. I wanted to build things that lasted. She dreamed of writing a novel. I was studying civil engineering. We were different enough to be interesting, similar enough to understand each other. When I drove her home at 2 a.m., she kissed me goodnight on her front porch, and I felt like I'd won the lottery. Our courtship was simple and perfect. Weekend hiking trips where we'd talk for hours about our futures. Quiet dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants where we'd share dessert and plan imaginary vacations I proposed on the same trail where we'd had our first real conversation about marriage, sunset painting the sky orange and gold. She said yes before I finished asking the question. Our wedding was intimate, 50 people in a small chapel, followed by dinner at the country club where Claire's parents were members. No drama, no family feuds, no expensive disasters, just two people promising to love each other forever, meaning every word. Our honeymoon was a week in a rented cabin in the mountains. No room service, no tourist attractions, just us and a fireplace and the absolute certainty that we'd chosen right. When Ethan was born 3 years into our marriage, everything clicked into place. I remember holding him for the first time. This tiny, perfect person who was half me and half Claire, and feeling like my life had found its true purpose, I became obsessed with providing for them. I worked harder, took on extra projects, climbed steadily from junior engineer to senior engineer to project manager. Every overtime hour, every missed dinner during project deadlines, every sacrifice was worth it because I was building something. Security, stability, a future where my family would never want for anything. Claire stayed home with Ethan, and it was our choice, our partnership. She was a natural mother, patient with his tantrums, creative with his entertainment, fierce in protecting him. She managed our suburban house like a general managing an army, everything organized and comfortable. I provided. She nurtured. It worked. 17 years later, our life had settled into something I thought was unshakable. Ethan was now 16, a good kid, not perfect, but solid. He played basketball, got decent grades, had friends who weren't criminals or drug addicts. He respected us, helped around the house without being asked, talked to us about his life family dinners most nights, weekend yard work where he'd help me trim hedges and complain about homework. Claire's book club every Thursday, my poker nights twice a month with the same group of guys I'd known for a decade. Nothing extraordinary, but that was the point. We were stable, reliable, safe. The American dream in suburban form, a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage and a mortgage that was almost paid off. Just last Tuesday, we'd sat around the dinner table, all three of us, and everything felt perfectly normal. Ethan was talking about an upcoming basketball game, excited about playing a rival school. Claire was laughing at one of my stories about a miscommunication with a contractor who'd somehow managed to order twice as much concrete as we needed. I watched them both, my wife of 20 years, my 16-year-old son, and felt that deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've built something good. I never looked too closely at the details. Why would I? Claire seemed happy. She had her routines, her friends, her interests. If she was quieter sometimes, if she seemed distracted occasionally, I chalked it up to normal life stress. Everyone goes through phases. But there were things. Small things I'd dismissed because they didn't fit the story I was telling myself about our marriage. Claire's phone was always face down now, and she'd developed a habit of taking it with her to the bathroom. She'd bought new workout clothes, expensive ones from brands I didn't recognize. There was a sudden intensity to her attention to her appearance that seemed different from her usual care about how she looked. I told myself she was feeling good about herself, wanting to stay attractive and healthy. What husband complains about his wife wanting to look her best? I never suspected, never even considered the possibility that the foundation I'd spent 20 years building was already cracked. Wednesday started like any other day. I kissed Claire goodbye, reminded Ethan about his game on Friday, drove to work expecting another routine evening. I had no idea my son would walk through the door that afternoon with information that would detonate my entire world. I thought 20 years of loyalty earned me the same in return. I was about to learn how little my sacrifices meant. Wednesday should have been routine. The municipal infrastructure project I'd been overseeing for 3 months wrapped up ahead of schedule, rare in civil engineering, where delays are more common than completed work. My supervisor sent the whole team home at 2 p.m. with genuine congratulations. I actually felt optimistic driving home, thinking about maybe tackling the gutters I'd been putting off, or just enjoying a quiet afternoon in my own house. I pulled into our driveway at 2:45 p.m., noting Claire's car was gone. Probably shopping, book club preparation, maybe meeting a friend for coffee, normal things. I changed clothes, made myself a sandwich, turned on the news. Comfortable solitude. Ethan walked in at 3:30, and I immediately knew something was wrong. My son's face was troubled in a way I'd rarely seen. Shoulders tense, the easy confidence he'd inherited from Claire completely absent. He dropped his backpack like it weighed 100 pounds and stood in the kitchen doorway, staring at me. "How was school?" I asked. He hesitated. Ethan never hesitates. He's always been direct, honest, quick to share his thoughts. But now he stood there looking like he was carrying something too heavy to lift. "Dad," he said finally, voice careful. "I saw her." "Saw who?" I replied, though something in his tone already made my stomach clench. "Mom. I saw Mom," he answered. The words came out slowly, reluctantly, like he was performing surgery on himself. Ethan explained he'd been cutting through Riverside Park on his way home, a shortcut he'd taken hundreds of times. He'd spotted Claire near the duck pond, standing close to a man I didn't recognize. Not just talking close, too close. "I watched them," Ethan said, and I could see how much he hated having to tell me this. "They kissed. Like, really kissed. And she put her hand on his chest, and they were looking at each other like what?" I pressed, though I dreaded the answer. "Like how you and Mom used to look at each other," he finished quietly. My first instinct was pure denial. Ethan was 16. He was seeing things wrong, misinterpreting innocent friendship, maybe confusing Claire with someone else. There had to be an explanation. 20 years of marriage doesn't just evaporate because your teenage son thinks he saw something in a park. "Ethan, are you absolutely sure it was—" "I took a picture," he interrupted. The words hit me like cold water. Ethan pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly, and showed me a photo that made my blood stop moving, blurry but unmistakable. Claire in her new blue jacket, standing intimately close to a tall man in an expensive coat. Their faces were turned toward each other, bodies angled in a way that spoke of familiarity, comfort, routine. "I wrote down his license plate," Ethan continued, voice getting smaller. "I looked it up online. Isaac Kane. He's some kind of real estate developer divorced twice. I found his business website and some news articles about him buying properties downtown." I stared at my son, this boy who'd somehow become a detective in the space of an afternoon, and felt something fundamental shift in my chest. The careful structure of our life, the certainty I'd wrapped around myself like armor, started cracking. "Ethan," I said carefully, "where exactly did you see them?" "By the duck pond." "But Dad, that's not all. I watched them get into his car, a black SUV. They drove away together," he explained. The room felt like it was tilting. I pulled out my phone and called Claire, forcing my voice to sound normal, casual. She answered on the third ring, sounding bright and cheerful. "Hi, honey. What's up?" she said with that familiar warmth. "Just wondering how your day is going." "What are you up to?" I asked, watching Ethan's face. "Oh, just shopping. You know how it is. I'll be home soon. Love you," she replied brightly. Every word felt like sandpaper against my soul because I could hear it now. The artificial brightness, the performance. How long had she been performing for me? When I hung up, Ethan was watching my face carefully. "You don't believe her either," he said. "Show me that license plate number again," I requested. Ethan rattled off the digits he'd memorized. I pulled up our family's Find My Device account on my phone, something we'd set up years ago for safety, so we could locate each other in emergencies. Claire's location appeared on the map, and my world collapsed completely. The Grand Regency Hotel, downtown, expensive. The kind of place where people go when they want privacy, when they don't want to be seen, when they're doing things they can't do at home. "Dad?" Ethan's voice seemed to come from very far away. I stood up, jaw clenched, decision crystallizing in my mind like ice. "Get in the car," I ordered. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To get proof she can't deny," I answered grimly. Ethan looked at me with something between relief and terror. I think he'd been carrying this weight alone, not knowing if he should tell me, hoping maybe he was wrong. Now he knew he wasn't wrong, and he could see in my face that everything was about to change. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry I had to be the one to tell you." I pulled him into a hug, felt how much taller he'd gotten, how much stronger. "This isn't your fault," I told him firmly. "You did the right thing. You saved me from living a lie." But inside, questions were assaulting me like physical blows. How long had this been going on? How had I missed it? What else had I missed? How many times had Claire come home from her shopping trips and kissed me with another man's taste still on her lips? My son had just handed me a grenade. Now I needed to decide where to throw it. I drove with singular focus, but my mind was churning through scenarios. Barging into that hotel room and screaming would accomplish nothing except giving Claire room to manipulate, minimize, make excuses. She'd cry, claim it was a mistake, promise it would never happen again. She'd make me the villain for not trusting her, for spying, for bringing our son into adult problems. I needed evidence so clear, so undeniable, that no judge, no therapist, no mutual friend could ever question what had happened. I needed to end this completely, with no wiggle room for her to claim innocence or victim status. "We need to stop somewhere first," I told Ethan. "Where?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Flower shop," I replied. Ethan looked puzzled until I explained my thinking. Hotels don't give out room numbers to strangers, but they make exceptions for special deliveries. Flowers are the perfect cover, a thoughtful surprise for a guest. It was simple, brilliant in its obviousness, and completely legal. At Bob's Flowers, I bought an arrangement that cost more than most people spend on groceries. White roses and lilies, elegant and expensive looking, the kind of bouquet that suggests celebration or romance. The florist wrapped it beautifully, added a card that I left blank. "This is really smart, Dad," Ethan said with growing admiration as we drove toward downtown. I glanced at him and saw something in his face that bothered me. Excitement, anticipation. He looked like a kid about to watch an action movie, not a son about to witness his family explode. But I pushed the thought away. Ethan was just processing this differently than I was. He was hurt and angry, too. He wanted justice. The Grand Regency was exactly what I'd expected. Understated luxury, the kind of place where wealthy people conduct business they can't do in offices. Marble lobby, soft lighting, staff trained to see nothing and remember less. I approached the front desk with the bouquet, smile charming, voice smooth. "I have a delivery for Isaac Kane. Could you tell me his room number?" "It's a surprise celebration," I said confidently. The receptionist, a young woman named Lisa according to her name tag, hesitated. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't give out guest room numbers policy," she replied apologetically. I pivoted smoothly. "I understand completely. Would it be possible for you to escort us up?" "I'd hate for him to miss this surprise, and I want to make sure it's appropriate," I suggested. Lisa considered this, then consulted with her manager, a tired-looking man in an expensive suit who emerged from an office behind the desk. After a brief conversation, he nodded approval. "Room 412, Lisa announced. "I can take you up." In the elevator, I handed my phone to Lisa. "Would you mind recording this? It's such a special moment and I want to capture his reaction," I requested with manufactured enthusiasm. She agreed, charmed by what she thought was a thoughtful gesture. I knew exactly what I was doing, creating a witness, a third party who could testify that what was about to happen wasn't staged or edited. Lisa would be my proof that everything was real and spontaneous. The elevator climbed slowly, 4th floor, down a carpeted hallway to room 412. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Beside me, Ethan was breathing hard, hands clenched into fists. I knocked on the door, firm, confident. 3 knocks, footsteps inside, a pause, then the sound of the security chain being undone. The door opened. Claire stood there in a white hotel robe, hair disheveled, face flushed from recent activity, skin glowing in a way I recognized from 20 years of marriage. Her expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and pure terror in less than 3 seconds. "Thomas? Ethan? What are you doing here?" she stammered. I didn't answer. I pushed past her into the room, Ethan right behind me. Lisa followed, still recording, confused but committed to her role in what she thought was a romantic surprise. Isaac Kane sat on the bed, shirtless, expensive watch still on his wrist, looking annoyed at the interruption. He was younger than me, better looking in a polished way that suggested personal trainers and expensive grooming. The kind of man who wore cologne that cost more than my monthly car payment. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, standing up aggressively. I dropped the flowers. White roses scattered across expensive carpet. I crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Isaac by the arm before he could react. "Wait, man, what's going on?" He started to protest. My fist connected with his jaw. The crack echoed through the room like breaking wood. Isaac crashed into the wall, eyes wide with shock, blood already starting from his split lip. What happened next wasn't brawling. It was execution. Every strike was deliberate, controlled, purposeful. I grabbed him by the shoulders and slammed him back against the wall, punched him in the stomach. When he doubled over, I brought my knee up into his ribs. Ethan, without being asked, grabbed Isaac when he tried to slip away, held him in place while I worked. My son's face was blank, focused, like he was helping me fix a broken appliance instead of beating a man unconscious. I kicked Isaac in the stomach, then the ribs, then again. He curled into himself, whimpering, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This man had touched my wife, had been inside my wife, had laughed at my ignorance while he destroyed my marriage. "Stop! Thomas, stop!" Claire screamed, trying to pull me away, but I shrugged her off like she was weightless. She might as well have been a stranger. I looked down at Isaac, face bloodied, lips split, clutching his ribs, making small, wounded animal noises. He was pathetic, weak, a man who could only steal other men's wives, never build anything of his own. "If you ever come near my wife again," I said, voice ice cold, "I'll finish the job." Isaac nodded frantically, unable to speak through his pain and terror. I turned to Lisa, who had stood frozen in the doorway through the entire beating, phone still recording, eyes wide with shock. She hadn't stopped filming. She hadn't run. She'd witnessed something raw and terrible and captured every second. "Thank you for the video," I said calmly, taking my phone back. "I really appreciate your help." She nodded, completely speechless. I walked past Claire without looking at her. Ethan followed silently. Behind us, Claire collapsed beside Isaac, sobbing, begging me to wait, to talk, to let her explain. But I didn't look back. There was nothing to explain, nothing to discuss, nothing left to save. In the car, Ethan sat silent, staring at his hands. I glanced at him and saw something I didn't want to acknowledge. A tremor, pallor, the shock of what we'd just done together. But I pushed it aside. We'd done what was necessary. Justice had been served. I had the evidence. I had the rage. Now I needed to make sure she lost everything. I drove straight from the Grand Regency to Margaret Sinclair's law office. Margaret was my attorney, sharp, ruthless, the kind of divorce lawyer who treated family court like warfare I had called ahead. She was waiting. "Show me what you have," Margaret said without preamble as Ethan and I settled into the leather chairs across from her desk. I played the video. Margaret watched Claire answer the door in the robe, Isaac on the bed, the confrontation, the violence. When it ended, she leaned back with an expression of predatory satisfaction. "This is more than enough," she declared. "Clear adultery with video documentation and a third-party witness. You'll keep the house, the savings, your pension. She'll get nothing." "How fast can we move?" I asked. "I can have papers filed tomorrow morning. She'll be served within 48 hours, Margaret replied efficiently. "Given this evidence and the fact that your wife has no independent income, has no proof of financial contribution to marital assets, and will be the clearly at-fault party, your position is unassailable. No alimony, no division of assets, nothing." "What about Ethan?" Margaret asked, turning to my son. "You're 16, old enough to choose your living arrangement." "I stay with Dad," Ethan stated firmly. Margaret nodded approvingly and began drafting preliminary paperwork while we waited. I signed initial documents that would set Claire's world ablaze. Margaret handled everything with surgical precision, explaining each form, each filing, each strategic move. "I estimate 60 days to finalization given the evidence," she concluded. Ethan and I left the office and went home. I ordered pizza, and we settled on the couch in our living room, the house I'd paid for with 20 years of work. While we waited for the food, I changed all the locks. Ethan helped, working quietly and efficiently. We ate pizza and watched basketball highlights in companionable silence, two men preparing for siege. At 9:15 p.m., Claire's car pulled into the driveway. Ethan and I heard her get out, heard her heels clicking on the walkway, heard her approach the front door like she still lived there, like she still belonged. She tried her key. It didn't work. She tried again, rattling the handle. Nothing. Then came the pounding, desperate, angry, demanding. "Thomas! Ethan! Open this door right now! I live here! You can't lock me out! I'm still your wife!" she shouted. Ethan walked to the door and spoke through it, voice cold and too adult. "You destroyed your marriage, Mom! We don't want you here!" "Ethan, please, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please let me in. We can talk about this," she pleaded desperately. "You made a choice," Ethan replied coldly. "Now live with it." I joined him at the door, keeping my voice calm and final. "Divorce papers will be served tomorrow morning, Claire. Don't contest them. It'll be faster and easier for everyone." "Thomas, I have nowhere to go. Please, I love you. I love both of you. It was just one time," she cried. Even now, even caught with overwhelming evidence, she was lying. "Not our problem," I responded, turning up the television volume. Claire sobbed on the porch. She pounded again, begged, screamed that she had rights, that this was her house too, that we couldn't just throw her out like garbage. She cycled through every emotion: rage, bargaining, desperation, self-pity. She called me controlling, abusive, cruel. She called Ethan ungrateful, manipulated, turned against his own mother. She promised to end things with Isaac, swore it had been temporary insanity, claimed she'd been depressed and confused. All lies, all manipulation, all irrelevant. For 2 hours, Ethan and I sat on our couch watching basketball highlights. We didn't move, didn't respond, didn't acknowledge the woman crying outside like she was a stranger having a breakdown in a public place. Finally, the crying stopped. We heard her car start. Headlights swept across our front windows as she backed out of the driveway and drove away. I felt victorious. I'd taken the first steps to erase her from my life. But when I looked at Ethan, I saw something unsettling. His expression was cold, almost empty. The boy who used to laugh at terrible jokes now looked like someone who'd learned to shut something off inside himself. "You okay, bud?" I asked cautiously. "Yeah," he replied, but his voice was flat. "We're good. We're going to be fine." I told myself he was right. We were good. We were going to be fine. I thought revenge would fix everything. I didn't realize I was breaking something else. 60 days passed. The divorce was finalized exactly as Margaret had predicted. The video evidence was so overwhelming that Claire's court-appointed attorney advised her not to contest anything. She signed the papers. She got nothing. No house, no savings, no alimony, no claim to my pension. 20 years of marriage dissolved with her left financially destitute. Ethan formally chose to live with me. The court didn't even require a hearing. Ethan was 16, articulate, and his reasons were documented. He told the judge he didn't want contact with his mother. The judge granted it. The scandal spread through our suburban community like wildfire. Someone from the Grand Regency, maybe Lisa, maybe another employee, talked. Soon everyone knew. Claire Bennett was caught at the luxury hotel with Isaac Kane. The video didn't circulate publicly, but the story did. At the grocery store, people whispered and pointed. At church, conversation stopped when Claire appeared. She tried to attend one of Ethan's basketball games. Parents turned their backs. Isaac Kane left town within 3 weeks. His business partners distanced themselves, his clients heard rumors, and his reputation, already damaged from 2 divorces, completely imploded. He relocated to Arizona, presumably to start over where nobody knew his name. Claire, desperate and alone, followed him there. She had nowhere else to go. No job, 18 years as a homemaker had left her with no marketable skills, no money. The divorce had cleaned out her access to everything. No friends. The social destruction had been total. She tracked Isaac down in Phoenix, begged him to let her stay. He refused. He wanted nothing to do with the woman who'd brought him a beating and public humiliation. Claire ended up in a cheap apartment, working retail at a big box store, earning minimum wage, completely alone. I heard this through mutual acquaintances. I felt satisfaction. She'd made her choice. Now she was living with the consequences. But the satisfaction was thinner than expected, because Ethan wasn't okay. I watched my son over those 60 days and saw disturbing changes. Ethan had nightmares. I heard him wake up gasping. He stopped hanging out with friends. His grades slipped from B's to C's. He quit the basketball team, claiming he'd lost interest, but I suspected it was because he couldn't handle the attention, the whispers, everyone knowing what his mother did and what he'd helped me do. One night I found him sitting in the dark in our living room, staring at nothing. "You okay, bud?" I asked gently. "I held him down," Ethan said quietly. "While you beat him, I helped you hurt him." I sat beside him. "He deserved it," I replied firmly. "Maybe," Ethan answered, voice hollow. "But I keep seeing his face. I keep hearing Mom crying on the porch. I know she's wrong. I know she destroyed everything, but I keep thinking, I'm 16. I should be worried about basketball and homework, not divorce court and revenge." I didn't know what to say. I told him he'd done the right thing, that exposing the truth was brave, that Claire had brought this on herself. Ethan nodded but didn't look convinced. Ethan started seeing the school counselor. I didn't learn about it until the counselor called me. Ethan had self-referred, expressing difficulty processing what he called family trauma. The counselor recommended a therapist. I agreed, but felt a gnawing unease. Dr. Evelyn Hernandez's assessment, shared carefully with me, included phrases that hit like punches. Premature exposure to adult betrayal, complicated role reversal, potential moral injury from participating in retaliatory violence. I realized, slowly and horribly, that in my justified rage, I had weaponized my son. I'd made Ethan the discoverer, the investigator, the witness, the accomplice. I'd made a 16-year-old boy help me beat a man unconscious and then stand at our door telling his crying mother she deserved to be homeless. I'd gotten my revenge. Claire had lost everything. Isaac had fled. But Ethan, loyal, good, brave Ethan, had paid a price I'd never intended. The son who'd saved me was now struggling with nightmares and guilt and questions about right and wrong that shouldn't burden someone so young. The experience will likely stay with him his entire life, Dr. Hernandez explained during our consultation. Not as debilitating trauma, but as a defining moment that shaped his understanding of loyalty, betrayal, and justice. Ethan had learned at 16 that love could turn to hate instantly, that revenge felt good but cost more than expected, that protecting someone you cared about sometimes meant participating in darkness. I'd destroyed my wife, I'd protected my son, but I'd never asked if those two things were compatible.